Take it down on the floor.
That's Brian.
I said, I'm gonna pick it up.
I throw stuff in the dumpster and make him dig it out.
He won't dig that out of there because he couldn't even lift it this high to put it on the car.
Since it's 4 o'clock, I'll call the Charter Township of Comstock Planning Commission meeting to order. Welcome to the Joint Planning Commission and Moratorium Committee meeting. This meeting is now called to order. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You want to take this then, or you want me to? You can. Okay. First, we need to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to this agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of minutes?
There are no minutes this time.
No? Just out there to confuse me?
Sorry, standard agenda.
Okay. New business, introduction to the moratorium committee. Thank you all for taking the extra time before your planning commission meeting to meet with us. I will read the mission statement of the moratorium committee: to develop a community responsible plan that informs the general public of the rules and regulations of the Renewable Energy Ordinance and analyzes the compatibility of Public Act 233. At our moratorium committee meetings, we designed it to where we could have an educational component leading up to the workshops and discussions. The first presentation was from Robert Thaw in regards to Public Act 233, with some key points mentioning that the moratorium was a good place to be and to hold the ordinance until the litigation played out. He mentioned industry progression in other states like California and how they are learning from experience, with lawmakers now calling for changes in law for setbacks, with one proposal being 3,200 feet. Mr. Thal mentioned prior experience citing renewable energy projects before November 2024, when Public Act 233 was enacted, being in zones away from residential districts and placed in industrial zoning. The second meeting was the Eagle Renewable Energy Academy, and that demonstrated trade-offs in building ordinances and workable ordinances being applicable with community-ready funding. The next was a meeting with the developer that was mentioning the specifics on site selection, technology, and the implications of switch yards. The other meeting was the Michigan Public Service Commission, mentioning a holistic process of looking at each contested case individually. Our latest meeting was a workshop to talk about building the ordinance, and we are seeking direction and input from the Planning Commission if there are any areas of concern or research that may need to be conducted or addressed. And that can be, after we all discuss if there's a direction, more research, something that you want us to dive into as a committee. We haven't scheduled our next moratorium committee meeting until after this meeting to see how this goes and which direction we would like to head. The moratorium did end a little bit sooner than we anticipated, before we theoretically ended with votes before we were able to start our workshop. And then as we watched the planning commissions, we noticed that the planning commission was talking about the same thing that we were working on. So I thought it would be a good idea for us all to get together. Our last workshop, we did not begin to recommend or make any changes on the ordinances. We just talked. I have some of the key points that we talked about that I'll share. It's pretty interesting, and I can see where you guys are coming from on other ordinances to look at multiple different ordinances while you're trying to build one. It's like looking at a lot of stuff at once, so I see that there's good and bad in all of them, and it can be quite intricate, and so I respect all the work that you guys do looking into these things. We looked at other townships that mentioned soil testing, requiring cation exchange capacity. That way the soil would actually be tested, so when it was to be remediated, there would be a test in order to be able to remediate it back to have standards. We looked at different quadrants and spaces in the master plan, and those things which they recommended for agricultural development lacking in park amenities but rich in farmland. We also mentioned a drain tile inspection before, after, and annually with construction, and the emphasis of the importance of a third party doing those inspections. A stormwater assessment plan to minimize, mitigate, and repair drainage impacts at the expense of the applicant, required to meet with the drain commissioner. In other ordinances, we've seen that it was a suggestion if you could meet with it, and we talked about the potential of making that a requirement. A dust control during the construction with a third-party checklist signing off on that protocol was followed. Construction surface runoff created by construction water management. Different studies from, there was one ordinance in particular, Ida Township. They had lots of different studies, and maybe as we're skimming through the ordinance, I'll be able to read some of the studies that they required. A hazmat and recovery study from a third party per site plan prior to approval to study the impact, and which would be from an accident or nature to determine the bond and escrow per site submission. Instead of having like a blanket number, there would need to be a study to determine the number. Something along the lines of the Michigan Public Service Commission has their contested case process. So we were asking in the special exemption, could there be instead of the standard 300 to 400 feet, would there be perhaps maybe a 1 mile notice to involve more feedback? Extraordinary events, mandatory exclusion zones we talked about near schools and high populated areas, required public utility access to sewer and water prior to submission, and Gunplain Township, they had a requirement of a feasible alternative location. So when a site plan was submitted, they would also have to demonstrate that. And Gunplain Township also had in their ordinance that there would be, with special exemption submission, there would be a public benefits analysis presented. So those were just the conversations that we had. Council did mention to us one key point in this ordinance with being with the state law, in that they, with a utility scale project, that they may not have to apply for building permits. And in the existing ordinance that we have, some of our monetary value in payment is triggered by those permits. So if those permits are never applied for, the question would be, do we ever get paid? So we would definitely want to address that. We did ask if we could put that in the special exemption approval as a requirement to mandate the building permits, and we were told that we can't do that because that exceeds the state law. And then another conversation that we had was, I feel like in the scope of these conversations, when people are talking, if you're talking about, if you go back into our original ordinance, and I'm sure we'll get there, but there's a part about health, safety, and welfare. And when we talk about a workable ordinance, is a workable ordinance that covers and parameterizes every single aspect of health, safety, and welfare? And if we make it workable by peeling the layers of the onion off to make it more attractive to a developer, what is the real workable? Is a workable ordinance one that is our rules, our regulations, and as a developer, if you choose to use them, then it becomes workable? And so I think that's Jerry had a point of his career where he analogized something at the last meeting, if he would like to share that. But every time I've heard conversations to back the bus up, are if we're getting too strict, well, if we're too strict, there's still an option on the table to go to the state. It's not like you're leaving an applicant with no option. And you say, well, that's not workable. But is it safe? So that's where I will leave you. I thank you all for meeting with us, and I'm excited to scroll through this ordinance. Jerry, would you want to mention what you had mentioned as far as the safety aspect on that conversation, if you recall? If not, that's fine. But as far as a workable...
I don't recall what it was.
Okay, no problem.
When you thought things about it,
As for the, can you hear me all right? Yeah. As for the layout of this meeting, I'm not sure how you want to proceed. I know that Ben has several ideas that he would like to discuss as far as additions to our ordinance. So I'm not sure if we want to go through our ordinance piece by piece, line by line, and see if anybody wants to suggest anything, and then talk about additions, or how you want to go about that.
Amber, would you like to speak to that?
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking, we've all been through the ordinance, like everybody sitting up here has read it, so maybe we just start spitballing some ideas. So if there's ideas that the committee has, maybe we listen to those and have some discussion and see where we land. I don't know.
I think as far as general notes of our limited availability, it would be good to hear each planning commissioner's input, so we could note that for our next meeting if there's any questions, comments, or concerns that stand about as well. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. Bob, any thoughts? I have no problem with our ordinance as we wrote it. Everyone keeps talking about safety, welfare, whatnot. We've heard presentations from the company. We've heard presentations from the state. The state sets specific rules and setbacks. We made those tougher than what the states are. We're not engineers. Everyone keep talking about exploding batteries and this and that. You know, I haven't seen any scientific information on anything where these batteries explode. I know they burn. Have there been any burning since they've updated the batteries since 2016 from the specific company? The ones in New York, yeah, because there were the old lead acid batteries inside a coal plant and this and that. Setbacks, you set them back too far, you make it non-workable. I'm okay with the ordinance the way it's written. We spent a lot of time to write this ordinance to make it stiffer. A lot of things that you do want, you can write into the special use. You don't write them into the ordinance. You put them into the special use when you approve that. And without a site plan, we can't go forward with anything until we have a site plan, and we can't have a site plan until we have an ordinance. But everything else is built into the special use, what you want from fire training to this to that. So, I mean, that's where I stand on it, and that's where I've stood all along.
Craig?
I think when we talk about workable ordinance, I think we want to make it difficult enough that they think twice. We don't want them to take advantage of our community. It seems like, I think it's a great idea that we're all sitting here together and going through each item.
Joe?
I think the existing ordinance was well-written and is quite comprehensive, but I agree with a number of the items that you listed as possible changes. I've, personally pushed for, some sort of exclusion or proximity clause to protect sensitive buildings like schools or event centers that are difficult to evacuate and have special problems with, potential plumes. As far as a workable ordinance, I would certainly want us to err on the side of conservation and protect ourselves. Workable is in the eye of the applicant and depends on their financial situation and what they can make work. We need to view this not from their financial position, but from the point of public safety and good planning.
Jim?
On the ordinance, I was part of the committee that helped put it together, threw out some ideas. We added it right here. The biggest thing that I was happy to see is about the decommissioning plan, about it, and how we review it every third year to make sure that security or security bond is put in place and at 125% of the value of what it should be. We are looking out for the township. We are making this workable, and very proud of the planning commission that helped put this together.
Sandy?
I respect the work that the moratorium committee did and the time they put into this. And I think we all need to keep an open mind and go through their list of what Supervisor Martin just read off and make sure that we are protecting the residents as well as the property in the township.
Jerry?
We were talking about a workable ordinance, and what I referred to is that I was a safety manager and I wrote safety programs, and I had to make sure that my safety program met the state and the federal government because they both had their own programs, and sometimes the state would meet or exceed the federal program. And so my reference to that was that when we write a workable program, it has to be workable, that it meets everybody's rules, just like the federal government and the state government and the local government. Because if you write one and it only meets your program and what you need, then it's really not you can't really call it workable unless it meets everybody else's rules.
Ms. Cherry?
I commend the planning commission that wrote this prior to, because I know you guys did a lot of work and did a lot of research. So thank you for that. I didn't necessarily have a huge problem with this. There are some things like the safety with the evacuation, where the site is. And you can kind of liken it to if there's a fire at the school. I mean, it's the same basic principle. There is a safety plan in place. Is it perfect? No. And they, CIP, I think is the name of the company, said that they would definitely have a safety plan in place, which made me feel a lot better about that. And as far as workable, like you said, it does have to be for all stakeholders, and so that's hard if we make it so stringent that it's not workable for them, then they bypass us, which is what we don't want, because then we lose all control. We have nothing. So I know this is a very touchy subject, and this is gonna be very difficult to kind of make it a win-win situation, because we all know not everything is a win-win, but hopefully that is our goal. And some of the things that Supervisor Martin mentioned, I think you mentioned we can write those into the special use. So a lot of what he mentioned, okay. And I was wondering if, can we ask as well, they bring the site plan, they say, okay, we want to have it sit this way. Well, no, we don't want you to have it sit with this way. Can you turn it this way? Giving us more clearance from the property lines or whatnot. You know, I wasn't sure if that was an option either, so, because I'm not really familiar with planning and zoning, so I'm not sure how that works.
Council?
Well, you can, sorry. You can ask. Now, if a site plan meets the ordinance, it should be approved under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. It's a shall, it's a mandatory. And the same thing with the special use conditions. If we satisfy the special use conditions that are in the ordinance, then we shall approve it. I'm a little concerned about adding conditions as, you know, things that I would think are necessary, like decommissioning agreements or any of the other things that may not be in here now that we might want in here, and just add them as special use conditions. Because if they satisfy what's in the ordinance, we have to approve it. So I think I think we can do that. I think it's possible. I would prefer not to do that, but I think we could possibly live with it. And I'll just mention, the building permit issue is a real issue. And I'm involved in this in more than one municipality right now. So I would really like to recommend that at the very least, the trigger point there's several things in your ordinance that trigger upon issuance of building permit. We need to look at revising that language at least so that we have a trigger point. One is the collection of the community host agreement and the decommissioning amount and all that other stuff. So at the very least, we would like to see that changed.
Yeah, thank you. I just think one of the things that's really important for us to keep in mind is that this ordinance that we put together and what we vote on, like, is not tied specifically to CIP. So while that's the company that's talking to us right now, and that's the company that is engaging with us, it doesn't mean that they couldn't say, you know what, I'm gonna go somewhere else, and some other company swoops in. And so when we say things like, I don't know that there's been battery explosion problems or things like that with this company, I think we just have to be really cautious of, this may not be who we finally are working with. So we need an ordinance that, and it's, you know, it's easy to think, I mean, I listened to them talk about all the things that they'll do or that they'll bring to the community or whatever, and it's easy to feel comfortable with someone, but we're writing something that could be for an unknown entity. And so we need to write something that we feel comfortable with, regardless of who stands on the other side of the application. I do agree that I think there's always room to improve almost anything, you know, like, I don't know that anything is ever perfect. And I think that, you know, one of the most compelling things that I've heard throughout all of this discussion over the weeks we've been talking about it, Catherine mentioned, you know, it's the way I took it, this is my own analogy, this isn't Catherine's analogy, but it's like a cell phone that you bought a year and a half ago, right? Like, technology changes and moves so quickly. And so I do believe that this was probably a great ordinance when it was written. You guys wouldn't have passed it and put it in place if you didn't think it was the best that you could put forth and the best that you could do. I just think that we have some additional information now. I mean, as simple as that trigger point, like, there's some different things that we need to consider. And so I would echo the ask for an open mind. And I think the most important concern from the community is the proximity to a school at the site that is currently being considered. And so I think we need to do our due diligence of what that would look like and whatnot as well, so that we can all feel comfortable that we're putting forth something that everybody can feel safe about, because I want to feel safe where I live.
Supervisor Martin, do you have anything else to add?
I will add it after your input, Larry.
Okay. My feeling is we work on ordinances and we try to do, with the help of everybody, the best we can. We wrote this ordinance not knowing of a site plan or anything else. There was, lots of talk of what it would be or could be, but we never knew, and I don't think we still do. But we do need to be careful when we write something, and I think our moratorium committee brought up many things that we hadn't thought about or hadn't looked at, and Catherine now knows of several that have come up that nobody thought of until it happened. So I think it's good that we're redoing it and looking at those items that could cause problems down the road. That's my 2 cents.
I've always thought that as far as the planning commission goes, the ordinance that was there, I think everybody appreciated it. And I think that could be considered a starting point and a building block. And anything I've ever tried to be part of, and certainly want to try to be part of, if it's set up for continuous improvement, that's always a good plan. So taking an ordinance that we have and keeping the strong points and working on the weak points, I think is very important. So by all means, I don't think anybody was discrediting the previous work. One thing that I got to thinking about was the state has a price of $2,000 per megawatt. Is that correct? Yes. And ours is $2,500. But in business, how do you set your prices if you don't know at what expenses that come in to you? So if somebody else is selling something and I say, well, hey, I'm going to sell my widgets for this because they're selling it for that, where's the internal number crunching on what is that really costing us? Is there a toll of wear and tear on our roads? Is there an opportunity cost of some sort of other cost? So I would just really like to be cognizant of how do we know that we got to $2,500 per megawatt, and that's our cost. And I would just like to emphasize that just because there's this 2,000, maybe some internal data to lead us to an answer why our cost per megawatt is there. And so I really would like to see some analysis of why that number is what that number is, and we might find that although it doesn't sound workable, if our cost needs to be, let's just throw out a number, $4,000. Well, if that number doesn't sound workable, but $2,500 wasn't a winning proposition for this township, we would have been better off not doing it. The Ida Township, additionally,
I can say, let me give a little background basically on the 2,500. This was one of the first, I have served as a reviewing person for the U of M, Graham Sustainability Institute, and the MSU, who together put together the sample battery storage ordinance. That sample battery storage ordinance is a couple, maybe 18 months, 2 years old now, and that's what you use to base your ordinance on. So at the time, it was the best thing that we had available. I had been involved in reviewing it as a reviewing party. And 2000, we just picked 2,500 because we were just starting out with trying to determine what would be workable. Again, wanting a company to come through us, so we're gonna say like, hey, if you wanna go to, we know it's gonna cost you more time and money to go to the state. So if you go to the state, you gotta pay 2,000. If you come to us, we just tagged it at 2,500. There was no specific analysis or anything done. Since the time we did this ordinance, which has been over a year, I know, other townships have adopted more money as their requirement for a community host agreement. That there was no magic to how 2,500 was picked, so let me just say that. You can do whatever you want with that, but again, keeping in mind, we do want it to be workable, so, where is the magic number? I really can't say. I've seen some townships that go very, very high, and, that will probably logically dissuade someone from coming to that township. So then what's the point of a workable ordinance? You can just have them go to the state. And the last thing I do want to say is, we do know, if they do choose to go to the state, you'll get the $2,000 a megawatt, and that type of thing, but you really would have to then enter into the contested case arena, through the MPSC if you didn't like the application that was coming. So again, those are your choices. Accurately, if we decide whatever we're gonna do here, we do the best we can and they don't wanna come here, whether CIP stays, whether they go away, somebody else comes. You're trying to figure out where is the best regulation for this municipality that we feel is, both protecting health, safety, and welfare, and is still workable to a company. And there's no magic to that, There's some townships you'll see are much more restrictive. Some are less restrictive. Some have no regulations. It's up to you totally how you want it. But there was no magic to the 2,500. We just stepped out a little bit away from the edge of the building, and we didn't jump off the cliff, if that makes sense. Yes.
Can I ask a quick question, Catherine? In our last meeting, you said the first application had come through for the
Yeah, there's at least one in right now. It's for a project in Vevay Township and 2 other townships up south of Lansing.
Do you know if those townships have workable ordinances or not?
I do not know the answer to that.
Because I was curious, is it somebody that had one that they bypassed? Because that would be good information to have. Or is it someone that just didn't have one at all, and so that's why they went to the state?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
That's okay.
Catherine, are you familiar with what happened in Otsego this week with the court case with the solar sighting?
No, I'm not.
So I believe from the research that I've done, the judge, I believe it was Judge Hunt, maybe?
Is that Otsego County or?
Otsego County.
Okay, that's Gaylord, okay.
Yep, he ruled that Public Act 233 does not mandate over that township, essentially.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yes.
I don't know about that case. I don't know what it means, but I'd be happy to look at it. I mentioned at the last moratorium committee meeting, so that the planning commission members know, the building permit issue is extremely concerning to me because I'm involved in the largest solar project in the state over north of Marshall, south of Olivet, 800 megawatts, 8,000 acres. And it was developed by a private developer. They're selling half of the project to Consumers Energy, and Consumers Energy asserts under the state construction code that as a utility, they do not have to pull building permits. So not only the things that trigger in our ordinance on a building permit, it concerns me for the reasons that were stated by the supervisor, but the whole idea that nobody is going to be looking at thousands of acres of solar panels that are being put in, leaves us really, really, really nervous as to what's going to happen. And, Consumers Energy says, we are a utility, we have skilled electricians, they are going to install the panels. You don't have to be worried. But how do you tell that to the people who are going to be surrounded on panels, 3 sides of them, that, hey, nobody from the township looked at these, there's no permits, nobody's checking it, nobody's looking at it. So there is a court case pending right now in the Court of Appeals on this issue as well. Hopefully we'll know sooner rather than later if they have to pull building permits for these types of projects. But that was one of my concerns with, and nobody knew this when we wrote this ordinance a year ago. This was not known. Everyone understood they would pull building permits. So this is just one of my biggest concerns right now. So I'm not familiar with that Otsego case, but I would like to know more about it.
Okay, I do like the path that we're on currently. And so I don't know if we want to begin with the building permit discussion and find an alternative wording we could use. Maybe, I don't know what Catherine would suggest. or if we want to begin talking about some of the big items that we have talked about in both the PC and MC meetings, if we want to begin discussing zoning districts we allow in, setbacks, if there's anything we like as far as height, fencing, lighting. Yeah, I can just check off where, how we want to begin. So I don't know.
Why don't we start with the things that we all agree on?
Okay.
Which are the permit issue and some of the things that Catherine's brought up that we really need to change on our ordinance. If we start there and go to the, move out from there,
So
then at least we have something concrete in it.
So as far as finding an alternative wording, instead of at building permit issuance, we begin to find other options, and then perhaps discuss zoning district setbacks and all that fun stuff afterwards.
So essentially, what would trigger our payments? Is that the?
So, yeah, so if I'm looking at your, is everyone okay with that, if we just get into this? Okay. All right, so on page 6 of your ordinance, well, page 5, number 17 starts talking about decommissioning removal. It says we have to have a decommissioning plan, including an agreement and a form that we record at the Register of Deeds. Tells all the things that are going to be in that decommissioning plan. A recorded copy of the decommissioning agreement shall be submitted to the township. I like to have that decommissioning agreement. I normally would have had it signed before building permit. I'm now going to require that it be signed within 15 days of the approval of a special use or something like that, because if we let this go too long, we're not going to get that signed agreement back. So, well, it's B, but B just says we have to have a recorded copy of the decommissioning agreement shall be submitted to the township. I think we need to have, it shall be executed and recorded within a set number of days. I don't know what it is, 15 days, 20 days, from the date of approval of a special use permit. And the reason I say that is no one's going to sign that decommissioning agreement before they get their special use approval, right? They're not going to commit themselves to that. But we need it to be a very short timeline, because sometimes people sell these projects as soon as it's approved, okay? It might be sold from Hecate Energy to consumers upon the approval by the municipality. And if we let this go too long, we're not going to get a signed decommissioning agreement. We must have a signed decommissioning agreement.
And
So-
consumers is impossible to deal with.
Thank you so much. I got it. So, I mean, I'm trying to think, what we've done in a couple of places is we've said, a lot of times we require that decommissioning agreement be already submitted to us before we approve the special use approval, and then we record it. I mean, I just think there has to be that has to say you're not only recorded, then that we get to record it, or that they give it to us within a set period of days. And it be a condition of the special use approval as well, because if they don't do it, we can look at revoking the special use approval. Now, we have to be very careful, because Public Act 234 that went along with 233 says, if you approve a special use permit for one of these projects, you can't change the terms or conditions. So if we put a lot of these conditions in the special use approval, I just want to be really sure. If they're not going to be in the zoning ordinance, we got to be crystal clear sure that when we approve a special use, we're all good with everything in it. Because the state law changed, we can no longer revoke or change a special use for these types of large projects.
Why couldn't we put it into the ordinance?
We can, but there's some concern about timeliness, I think. I think I'm hearing people say there's concern about the timeliness of this. We could put that in the ordinance, but as, I think we have discussed, we're into, past 6 months on our moratorium. There is some vulnerability there. So I think some people are concerned about timeliness. Other people are concerned that we get it right as best we can. And I don't know which way we err on the side. But you just have to know about Public Act 234, which said a companion ordinance, law that went with 233. And it said if someone approves a special use approval for these things after 2021, a date in 2021, we can no longer revoke or change unless both parties mutually agree, okay? So I want us to keep that in mind. So if we're gonna do something like this and we require as a condition, the decommissioning agreement shall be executed presented to the township, executed within, 5 business days of the planning commission's approval, or, the special use, or it's a violation of the special use approval or something like that.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Go.
Would it be possible to do it upon special, like immediately? That way you could avoid a transfer?
We could ask for that, because as you know, it says in here that the decommissioning agreement will bind any heirs, assigns, successors, all that. Yes, we can ask for it, that it be presented to us as part of the special use approval, that Casey has it in hand, it's executed by Hecate Engineering, whoever the applicant is, okay? And then the day after approval, we can go record it. Now, you will probably get some pushback from the applicant in that way, because they have separate business interests or possibly sales agreements or other things that are going on that's all contingent upon this type of an approval. So I want you to be aware that there will probably be some significant pushback on that. So as we're thinking about being workable, do we say it must be done in hand before we approve it? Or do we say it must be done within 5 business days? I don't really know. Again, I have no idea which would be the best approach, other than we do not want to be caught short without getting a recorded decommissioning agreement, because that we can enforce after the fact.
Isn't there some equivalent to like an escrow, where the agreement could be signed ahead of time, but executed or become effective when the approval is made?
Well, we could do that. Yes, we can do that. I just would like to have some timeline for the performance of that requirement, so the municipality's not caught short.
And you mentioned chasing them's not any fun. So if we can avoid chasing.
I'm not having fun chasing consumers' energy.
So where do we put it?
Well,
Or how do we make it so that it doesn't get overlooked?
Well, so here I would, in B on page 6, I would just say, an executed decommissioning agreement shall be submitted to the township prior to special use approval, or something like that. As a part of the application package or something like that, Casey. I mean, they don't have to submit it right at the beginning, but some point before you approve the special use approval, if that was to be done, you need to have it in hand. Not just a condition, but in hand.
Could we put it at 18 acre?
Yeah, so, so she's gonna add it as a decommissioning, somewhere in the application requirements or something like that. And so if you look, then you go down and you look at D. The decommissioning plan shall include financial assurance in the form of a bond or irrevocable letter of credit, but not cash. Here's what happens. An irrevocable letter of credit means you can never revoke it. It means you have to hold out like $4 or $5 million for 30 years. That it's commercially not feasible. So what we're finding out is these companies will give you a letter of credit that automatically renews every year, okay? Well, what happens when the company sells to another company? Right now, I have a company that is sold to consumers chasing me to release their letters of credit for $14 million, okay? And consumers saying, I'm not giving you a letter of credit because I don't have to, because I'm not the one who has the special use approval. So I'm saying, Company A, who is the applicant, I am not releasing your $14 million letter of credit until somebody shows up here at this township with some money, okay? So I mean, it's not a good position to be in, to be chasing. So here in D, we talk about, okay, irrevocable letter of credit, we're gonna ask for that, but it's very likely someone's gonna have to come and say to us, it's gonna renew annually. So that means then we probably are gonna have to deal with something about if it renews annually, you have to let us know at least 60 days before renewal that it's still good.
And Catherine, can I ask you?
Yeah.
Who would be responsible for making sure that that's kept up to date?
Generally, staff will be responsible for that, but understand that's a tall task
I know.
for staff over the next 30 years, okay? So keep that in mind, and it's essential that it not lapse, because if it lapses,
It's done.
you have nothing. I have another issue I don't think any land in this particular project where it might go is in PA 116. Is any of it in PA 116? That's farmland preservation? Okay. Okay, then we don't really need to talk about it, but all you need to know is that if land is in PA 116, MDARD, Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, will hold the bond on that part of the project. Your township will hold the bond on the rest of the project. So somebody's going to do an analysis of 14 million. How much is in PA 116 that the state will hold, and how much is the township will hold? And what's been going on over the last year with our conversations with MDARD as we learn this stuff is, hey, MDARD, they were first allowing us, township, to be named as a second party on their bonds. So if in fact something happened, the half of the project that's in MDARD, we would be covered as well as the township. They've changed their policy. They won't do that now. So my question to MDARD is if Joe Smith comes and pulls his land out of PA 116 because he died, the kids don't want it, whatever, over the next 30 years, and you release that money back to Joe Smith, his $14 million bond, how do I cover my other half at so-and-so township? And they said, oh, we never thought of that. Well, for goodness sakes, I thought of it because I have $14 million of exposure and I'm only holding $7 million. So, I mean, there's a lot of things we're learning as we go. We don't have to worry about that because you have no PA 116 land. But here it talks about in D, we're not going to use salvage value. We have to post the financial assurance of 125% by the start of commercial operation. Let's ask for before the start of commercial operation, okay? Now, they're gonna not wanna do it before the start of commercial operation because they're not making money before the start of commercial operation. But however, I cannot have, okay, so these projects, the one out in, by Olivet, it's been under construction now for probably a couple months. The first phase will get under construction in another year. What happens if it all goes down before then? What happens if all of a sudden the federal funding or whatever happens and it all goes down? I have no money. So when we were writing these workable ordinances before PA 233, we were requiring the posting of the financial surety like within 10 days of approval, the special use approval. Now the state came along and the state says you don't have to post a certain percentage till the first 5 years in. And we asked the state when they did this, what happens if the project goes belly up in the first 5 years? The township has no money. And they're like, oh, well, that's not gonna happen. Okay. So, I mean, just looking at D, I would like to say, you know, the financial assurance must be posted in full. You know, I don't know, just something before the start of commercial operation, because that could be a 1 to 2 year timeline after you approve, right?
Catherine, in terms of the irrevocable letter of credit, is there, and so if we say back to, okay, we have to validate, staff has to validate if in fact it's still good, if we have an annual renewal, is there any way to put the burden of proof on that back on, and maybe it's the owner operator, so that it's not who's got the special use permit, but if they fail to provide us proof 60 days prior to the renewal date, there is a financial penalty to them, so that
Yes.
And a substantial one, so that it's not desirable to let that lapse. And at every X amount of days closer you get, maybe that penalty increases.
We can, and even more so, I think, than a financial penalty is you will have violated the terms of your special use approval. And we're gonna, now, even though that public act says we can't, you know, I think we put something into our special use approval as conditions that is acknowledged by all parties herein, that any violation of the special use conditions is a violation of the zoning ordinance. And, you know, we can pursue all legal remedies. Because that kind of backdoors in the fact that we are going to enforce the conditions that we put on the special use approval. And tries to work around Public Act 234. So I think, you know, there are things here I think we could do if there was the appetite to do that. My experience is the bonding is gonna come from somewhere in New York City or some big bonding company, And all their bonding agreements and literature favors them. It doesn't favor us.
I would be in favor of imposing some form of accountability that we can have over what we need from them. And I would be in favor of putting the burden of proof on any of that on them and not on staff. Because to your point, 30 years is a long time. And I think that, you know, don't make our lives harder, you know?
I have a question. Yes. And it's probably a silly question, but so like the one you were talking about where they sold it to consumers and now consumers are saying, no, we don't have to do the bond or the letter of credit. Can you put something in there to say if it is sold or some kind of verbiage?
So we have in here something, and it generally says all these conditions apply to all heirs, assigns, or successors, which means anyone that comes after. The reason consumers is kind of fighting on this is they say, well, we only give letters of credit every 3 years, and in your ordinance in this particular township, it says you review it every 3 years, so we'll get you in 3 years. And it's like, I am not releasing developer A's letter of credit until I have something else in place. Meanwhile, half of my project's at the state of Michigan, which is making me less than confident on how that's gonna be handled, okay? So it's a little bit difficult. And we're gonna wait to see how some of these cases come out that are in litigation now. He just mentioned one that came out about Otsego County, to help us understand better whose obligations are what. But in the meanwhile, if we have a project that we are gonna deal with, we have to do our very best at the time that it happens to protect the township, especially in terms of decommissioning. I mean, you know, you can all talk about the setbacks and everything else you want to talk about, but I have to be responsible for making sure that there's enough money to decommission this project if something happens to it.
Should we go ahead and see if everybody supports what's been talked about?
Sure.
Amber?
Yeah, I'm in favor of, as we can, making decisions along the way, because I think that would be great. And I would absolutely be in favor of, you know, potentially changing it to say before the start of the project so that we can ensure funds are in place. And as I said already, like, I think there's got to be some sort of accountability on if they fail to provide that letter of credit, anticipating that it will become an annual or a possibility of an annual thing. And the third thing I would ask that there's clarity on is that regardless of sale of project, whether we call it owner-operator, that's language for you, Catherine, I don't know, but that they are bound by
All the same obligations.
the same rules and obligations, yes.
Bob?
Yeah, because we spent a lot of time on the decommissioning and whatnot, and how we were gonna handle it and make sure that we were covered in the community, the township and whatnot. So if we have to add a few things, you know, special use executed within how many days or whatever, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we're not changing that much, and like you said, we put that in the special use, or we put it in the ordinance?
I would prefer it I just would prefer in the ordinance, but in this, if there's time constraints, I mean, we could live with it the other way.
And put it in special use, and then
We
if they
can.
violate anything, they violate the special use.
Yeah, but
And,
I want to be very careful
yeah,
that we would have to really make sure our language of the special use approval says, you know, includes any violation of the special use standards constitutes violation of the zoning ordinance. I just had another municipal attorney call me about this yesterday. I don't know if any of you heard of the wineries case out of the Peninsula Township, in which the township was assessed $50 million in fees. That came out Tuesday. So We were talking about that case, but we talked about how we might tighten up language of special use approvals, and we talked about how we might put a condition, something explicitly stating any violations of the conditions of this special use are also a violation of the zoning ordinance and can be enforced in the same way. Because as we know, to enforce our zoning ordinance, municipal civil infraction, we go into court and we do it that way. So
I'm good with that.
that makes it a little easier.
Greg?
I second what Amber had to say. I also think that a signed agreement within an X amount of days, 15 days, is a great way to go. And I would like to see the ordinance be adjusted and not use the special.
Use
Yeah.
provisions.
Correct.
Quick question with that. If you have it in the ordinance, does it appear to be more universal, applied to everybody versus if, say, for example, we had 3 developers come in and one special exemption use requirement was a little bit more strict and then the other people kind of got like, would there be any discrepancy that they could raise of unequal
Yes.
treatment or something like
I
that?
would prefer it's in the ordinance for a lot of those reasons.
I agree with that also.
Universal.
Yeah, everybody's treated the same, and, you know, I don't want anyone to think they can't, that they can avoid doing these things, essentially. So if it's in the ordinance, it's a requirement, they have to do it. No, because again, keep in mind, if you meet the conditions of a site plan or special use under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, you have to approve it. And if I don't have those in my ordinance requirements, and I just try to tack them on at the end, I would imagine a very good real estate attorney would say to me, hey, I met the conditions in your ordinance, you don't get to put all this stuff on the back end on me. So I think, you know, I think we could possibly do it, it's not my preferred course of action.
Thank you. Joe?
I agree with what's been said. These are very practical and necessary changes in order to keep this ordinance current and effective. And I also feel that the fundamental changes that apply to everyone across the board should be made in the ordinance rather than in the special use provisions.
Thank you, Joe. Jim?
I agree that it should be in the ordinance. In my line of work, I would say we have to put the days quicker, 3 to 5 business days, I would say. And with my line of work of recording is a big thing. I like the idea of us getting it recorded, very much so. And then that's on B, and then going down to D, I do like the part of the annual review of this right here. And I don't know if I'm out of line by saying, but going to D where it says a letter of credit, a lot of times when you get the letter of credit, they tell you a lot of stuff you want to hear or see, but they don't tell you how you collect the money or how you apply there. That's what I have to say.
Thanks, Joe. Sandy?
I agree with James. Any bank that you know well enough can hand you a letter of credit, and it doesn't mean anything because there may be nothing there for credit to collect. So that's a good point, James. The thing that I ask is, as Casey, I believe it's you that's going to be making these changes, that you highlight them for us in this ordinance as we continue to work on this, so it's easy for us to see what we've done compared to where we came from. Absolutely. But good choices, everybody, so far. I'd like to keep us working forward. Gotcha.
Jerry?
I agree with what you're saying here, that we need to move forward with these ideas and that we need to cover all our bases.
Is it Jerry?
Yes, I agree, changing the verbiage for B and D, adding that it's executed prior to the special use approval, we record it. I do prefer that personally. That way we know everything that is in there is what we want in there and we're good to go. And then yes, how to collect and apply for, absolutely, absolutely. And that 60 days, I like that 60 days that they have to notify us when it's gonna expire. So, but, yes, definitely.
Ben?
My question would be, with companies and shell companies and LLCs, the language to hold any transfer or applicant, guess my question would be is if shell company X has no assets or money, but the big company does, and something happens and they dissolve, how do you?
That's why we have to have a bond that has some money behind it and never lapses, okay? Or an irrevocable letter of credit, but my experience is we're gonna have a hard time getting that. So, whether we strike irrevocable letter of credit from here, it is allowed under the state. I put in here no cash. I don't want anyone here holding $7 million for 15 years or something, okay? That's my recommendation. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say I don't want that.
I'll hold it.
But we have to be very careful on that, and that's why the situation I have right now, where I'm not releasing the letter of credit from the first company till I have the ones in hand from the second company, and the second company keeps giving me like, hey, not my problem, and the first company is becoming increasingly desperate to get off the hook for their $14 million letter of credit, or surety bond, I forget which it is. So it's an issue, and whoever is going to be responsible for maintaining these sureties, I want y'all to know that's a job. Because if you let it lapse, I've had this happen when we used to be Texas Township attorneys. They let a bond lapse, they went to call it because the developer went belly up and didn't finish paving the streets, and I couldn't get anything out of it because it lapsed, right? And it is an administrative task to have to keep track of those bonds and make sure, and if the company changes, what happened. So understand that whoever gets that job responsibility, it is a considerable obligation.
And is that bond and that value is according to the site specific? And my question would be is, if we have multiple projects and multiple applicants, we're not going with a fixed number?
Oh, no.
Every assessment is?
I believe, and Bob might remember, but normally the way we do it is the applicant will submit their cost from an engineer as to what they believe decommissioning costs, and we go out and use a third-party engineer, the township engineer, to review that plan and say yes or no, that's good or it's not good. Okay, you have escrow policy here, so you can pull an escrow on these projects for my time, for Kyle's time, for the engineer's time. So generally, if a CIP comes in, they will give you some type of engineer's report as to what their engineer determines the decommissioning cost would be. And then, you can have your own engineer vet that.
What if our engineer says no?
If he says no, then we've got engineers we're using over on the projects over in Marshall and in Olivet. We'll give you their names. They're doing full-time work on the job, on site.
No, I mean, what if our engineer vets their expense and says,
no, it costs
this
more.
isn't right?
Then we go with what our engineer says.
Okay.
As long as we think it's, reasonable and there's a basis for believing what they say.
I just wanted to add one thing. I know you guys don't really know me, but, so part of the reason why I want the ordinance itself to be changed is I work for the state, not MPSC. Let me throw that out there right now. But, so policy is extremely important. And so to have it more concrete and solid, I think, saves us. So I just wanted to kind of let y'all know that.
Okay, I think if I'm reading the committee, we all agree that we want Catherine to move ahead with the changes that we discussed, and it needs to be in the ordinance, not in a special.
Perhaps tonight we're recommending?
Yes. I think we're recommending that Catherine create.
I'm going to have Casey draft and, I'll look at it and then she'll do the strikeouts for all of you to see. Yeah.
Okay,
Question.
go ahead.
So these are amendments to the ordinance that we have, or we're writing a new ordinance?
They
These
would
are
just be amendments to the ordinance that we
To the
have.
ones that we have.
As I understand it, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
But again, since it's a zoning ordinance, it would have to go through the whole
Process.
public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can work through this and come up with several adjustments along the way, and then we can vote or process it all as one encompassing change. Is that correct? Or should we handle each one individually?
Each one individual, I would think.
But one adoption, because you don't want any company that is sitting here waiting to do a project to say, okay, they amended it.
Right.
Oh, now they made
Right.
another amendment. Oh, now they made another amendment.
That's what I meant, was one adoption.
Multiple
yes.
amendments with one adoption,
Yes,
essentially.
perfect.
Because it takes 6 months to.
Okay, so from here, do we want to start going through the ordinance?
It may be easier to start,
Yeah, just look at number 20, though, which is triggered by a building permit. That's on page 8. Okay, see all these things that are triggered? So I would like to say, instead of prior to issuance of a building permit, I almost think you want this stuff as part of your approval process, right? So
Yes.
instead of saying this is building permit, this is, all this stuff has to be done before we approve it. So I don't know where Casey moves it. Part of the application process, Casey, or, yeah. Because the executed community host agreement of however much money, that's J, as in Johnny. I think you get that community host agreement in hand before you approve it, sign, with 50% to be paid within 30 days of approval of the project. Or it might, I say 30 days. They might want longer, but I would say 30 days, and 50% to be paid at the commencement of operations. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
because
the-
originally we were gonna do 50% at the building permit, and then they said, well, you have to get the money from the bank, you have to get it transferred and whatnot. So we went with the 30 days
Yes.
from the approval of the
Made a lot
building
of
permit.
sense at the time. So now, I don't know if we say, 30 days from approval of the special use permit. And, let's see how that goes. That's my thought.
If what I'm hearing is right, 30 days, if, let's say, the contractor that came in, talked to us, CIP or whatever it was, sounds like a lot of these companies already have it sold when they come in to sign with us. 30 days is a long time, and they can be gone, and we're hung.
That's, if you would like to do, that's a real concern. So if you would like to do a shorter period of time, I don't have any problem with that.
It is for me in that regard, because
I'm wondering if we could move the whole 20 under 18, which is our application
That was going to
requirements.
be my proposal as well,
Yeah.
yeah. So take almost everything that's under 20, drop it under 18, and that way it comes to us at the time of application for special use permit.
And remove the
you're saying
30
have that check in hand?
otherwise,
sir.
we could get hung with this whole deal.
Yes, sir, I am. Show me the money.
Yes. And as far as the 30 days, are we removing that completely? Are we going to just say,
When do they have to pay the first 50%? When do they have to pay the first 50% of the
And that's the
community
host agreement, right?
That's the host agreement, right.
Upon approval?
There, I don't think you're gonna get it, well, you could say that,
I think that'd be tough because
How about 10 days? Can they do it in 10?
probably.
7 days,
I would
7
Say
working
either-
days,
well,
7 business days?
Yeah,
I'd
then-
use 10.
yeah,
I mean,
business
we went with
days is-
30 because of some of the things.
Well,
the other
7 business
companies-
days is really close to 10.
So,
yeah, and so then I'll just
To
move
SBU.
20
Special
under
exemption.
18.
It's the way you read it, half full, half empty,
You know,
so it just depends.
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
So for some of the commissions and the committee's background too, we seem to recall that we discussed this about a year ago for the 50% to be paid within 30 days of the issuance of building permit, as Attorney Kaufman mentioned earlier, because a lot of these organizations will wait until they have approval to sign everything else. So that was some of the feedback we heard in other communities as well. They wanted to wait to pay that community host agreement until they had all the approvals, building permits in hand to know that their project was moving forward. Based on all your conversations over the past 6 months, I mean, I am personally in support more of inquiring at least some of this upfront to show that they are committed to the project moving forward. So I want to give a little bit of background of why that was initially established in the ordinance for the 50 per days near the building permit for you.
what's being mentioned is the 50% would possibly be due within 7 days of approval of a special exemption.
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can they get 50% in 7 business days?
I mean, it's $500,000, so.
Well, they have
I would
lots of
think
money
if they-
behind them.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, if it's in the ordinance and they know about it,
Yep.
they build it into their analysis, right?
Correct.
So, obviously someone, and someone might come here and say, well, I can't do that or whatever, and, I don't really like to go off of that. So if somebody, we get feedback at a public hearing on this part of the amendment changes and a company comes in and says, my gosh, I need at least 2 weeks or something, then you can maybe look at that. Who knows?
I have a quick question. I believe I looked at Dexter Township,
Okay.
and they had a staggered plan, which I think it was like 50, 25, and then 25. It was offset to not collect the other 50 at the end of the decommission. So you'd essentially be minimizing your risk in half. Would that be possible to add a phased 50 up front?
Yeah,
And
we
then-
discussed that, but I don't remember exactly why we did not go that way. Do you remember, Larry, or Bub, or?
50 wasn't at the end of the decommission, 50 was at the end of construction when they started making money.
Or
Yeah.
commencement.
Yeah,
The 50 was within 30 days of the building permit, the other 50 was the day they pulled the switch and turned it on.
yeah, we
So-
wanted the money up front.
So,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay.
because if you wait till decommission, you'd wait 30 years. So we want it when they pull the switch, which would probably be roughly a year and a half to 2 years to
Yes, I think
complete
we're
the
all in
project.
agreement with the changes as far as building permit and putting it under 18 and then 7 days instead of 30 days. And I think that's all that Catherine had for her immediate recommendations.
Those are all my immediate comments.
So then Larry-
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Now,
Mr. Chair, if I could also add, working with another community, they have indicated as well that obviously these batteries do have to be replaced, new units have to come in. So I would like the commission and the committee as well to consider, are you going to approve a blanket site plan if a project came in and then allow the applicant to change out modules and then get building permits? Do you want them to have to redo a site plan if they're going to expand? So this other company was going to show full build out, let's say 200 units. Well, they might only put 100 in at first, and then as those degrade, they'll put in another 10, so forth, to maintain that megawatt that they have to provide. But they're looking at it from being approved for the entire site at full build out. So something to consider as well here, how you'd like to look at the site plan review process. Do you want to look at it as a full build out, or do you want to look at it in phases if they're adding them in?
I think we had under 16.
16, perfect.
That's in our ordinance.
Section 16.
yeah, I think that's already in our
Yeah,
ordinance.
that's in there.
16.
There's that.
Yeah, it's drafted. If it's the same footprint, you don't have to do anything more.
16 repair and augmentation.
Yeah,
But that's
it is. 16.
Yeah, we had that built in.
With something like this, I have a question. As much as the technology is changing on that, we want to put something in there that says, that says if it's something different, other than what the site plan said, we would like a new site plan?
As in
Like
battery-
new
Does say that
chemistry.
there? Okay.
Says if there's a changing battery.
Yeah, it's actually really good.
If there's a change in battery chemistry.
And then 18C,
It's there in 16.
See,
yeah, I think 18C talks about a modification of 20% right there.
In 16, it says if there is a change in battery chemistry and updated hazardous mitigation analysis, an emergency operation plan shall be provided. But it doesn't say that there's any additional review. It's just that they have to update their plans. So do you want there to be additional review if they're changing chemistry?
I think for our fire department, they may want to know that if something did happen. I'm just throwing that out there for discussion. I mean, if something does happen, they need to know what's happening, what they're going to deal with.
The other thing that's important is footprint. The way I would read that is footprint on the ground, square footage. Now, we have height restrictions in our ordinance, I think 15 feet,
15
right?
feet minus, not including the towers.
Right.
So in theory, they could go up X amount, up to 15 feet. If we feel like 15 feet is sufficient and we're not worried about that, about them going up without additional site plan review. I am not an engineer. There are plenty of you on here that do building for a living, far more than I do. Do you worry about footings, foundations, things like that, if they build up? And is that something that we have to worry about, or is that their engineer handles that? and
Well, we
they
have a
don't care?
20%.
Right.
Yeah, 18C covers that right here.
18C, if they
If
go over,
a footprint of 20% or more requires a new site plan.
I
But
think
if-
what she was mentioning is, are we measuring footprint both horizontally and vertically? Maybe
Right,
just-
because typically footprint is considered horizontally on the ground.
that's correct.
You can go up without changing a footprint.
So would it be square footage?
But when you got a 15-foot height,
Height.
you can't double them up because they're already 10 or 11 feet.
Yeah,
And
they're
then the
10
coolers
feet,
and
if I
stuff are
remember
on
right.
top of them, so.
So their site plan is restricted to
Yeah.
horizontal and vertical.
Couldn't there be a restriction on additional
Megawatts?
megawatts?
Well, we need to get paid.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about expanding, it would change that number, and that would give you the opportunity to review things like the.
Would it be
the fire
review
plant.
and approve? Like if they
So
wanted to
eight-
submit
So
a change?
18C says modifications that increase the footprint or energy capacity by more than 20% require a new site plan and special land use
Energy
approval.
capacity of 20%.
But do we need to specify the site plan includes vertical?
Well, I think that would be covered in the 20% more energy capacity. Now, if you want
The energy
to bring that number down from 20% to 10% or something to capture any type of change that you might want to capture, you could change that number in 18C if you think. We were just trying to get as with
I think
general,
20 is pretty generous.
site plan, administrative site plan review or something, a lot of times we don't come back to the planning commission if it's a
Okay,
smaller
well,
number.
we thought 20% was good.
Was
Yeah.
conservative enough, okay.
If they were to, say, increase at 5%, how would you know to get compensated?
Well, they still got to get a building permit for what they're going to do.
If
They don't have to
if
get
they-
building permits.
Oh, I thought it.
They will in our ordinance,
They,
right?
they won't.
Not
Not if it's
necessarily.
consumer's power.
That's in the state construction code. So, if there's an exemption in the state construction code for utilities, it is in there. We've read it. So if consumers or DTE are doing a project right now, we're probably not seeing them pull permits. If, like Hecate Energy is doing the project and building it out and then turning it over to consumers, this is where I'm in the middle, the no man's land, where I'm telling Hecate, you're not a utility, you're just a developer. Go get your building permits. And they're saying, oh, no, I've got a power purchase agreement, I have a sales agreement with consumers, I don't have to, I'm under their umbrella. No. So,
I want to know if they're increasing so that we get paid. The whole point of this project, the benefit to the community is a financial benefit.
I would like to see us go to 10%, not 20.
And they want to.
Well, I think we would want paid at any change. And how would we monitor any, I think we would need to be notified and review. I don't know necessarily like a whole site plan review, but where's the correlation? Like, where's the clause of communication? If for our community, if the size increases 1%, then we would need to know to be compensated, just a checks and measures in there. And then perhaps maybe then a percentage
change in.
of increase then warrants review. Let's just say, for example,
A sentence to C, where we are right now. What number is this?
18C.
1 second. Sorry, okay. Where am I at? There you go, yeah, 18C, putting a clause that any increase of energy is mandatory notification to the township.
Yeah.
Any,
Yeah, and if you violate that, then
it's a violation of what, not special land use?
of the zone.
And if it's more than
Okay.
20%, then it needs a new site plan.
Right, so two components to that.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
twofold.
Bias at any change, for a new site plan, special use 20 or 10, whatever you want.
Yeah,
And
like
would that include
I mean, 20
the
is
extra
okay as long as
increase
we know it.
somewhere in this ordinance for the extra pay?
Yes,
Okay,
because if it,
They pay by megawatt.
if you
Right.
trigger, if you go at 10%, any 10% or more increase, it's coming back through the special use and site plan again. And then you go back and you redo your community host agreement to up it to this additional megawatts, that type of thing.
So has everybody agreed we should go to 10% for the site plan review?
Supervisor Martin's thinking we should do, what'd you say,
He thought any.
Annie?
But not for a site plan, I think
Yeah,
that may be redundant.
We were talking about two things.
Yep.
First, any change needs to be compensated.
Right, we need notice.
And then anything over 10% needs a site plan review.
Okay.
Right? Wrong?
I guess I was just thinking from a presentation we were presented at a 400 megawatt project. If you did 20% of that, well, that would be 80. So, and then just in the scale of how much bigger, in a project,
In
10,
your-
10 or 15 or whatever we're thinking for the,
maybe 10,
additions.
I mean, 40 megawatts is some
10
serious power.
10 sounds good, and I was gonna ask, so in all of everyone's education on this project, does additional megawatts equate to additional risk, additional plume, additional, like, any of those things that would potentially, like, I just don't know, it's a genuine question.
No one's taking it home for free if it's gotta go, right? So how do you build that with it? If it grows, how is it assessed?
Yeah, does the decommissioning cost increase
It
if
would.
we increase megawatts?
And remember, we're looking at our decommissioning every 3 years, but I think there's something we can build into this section 18C about any modifications to the, footprint or energy capacity. Township must be notified, but then if it's 10% or more, and township must be notified and all obligations regarding, community host agreement and decommissioning shall be revised accordingly, or something like that. And then at 10% and more, you'd redo the site plan or something.
Maybe that would, some sort of stringency in there to yeah, as far as like in construction, if you do a change work order, the change work order needs to be paid before the change.
Pay as you go.
And then maybe, and then some construction companies say, okay, if you want to change work order, now our original invoice is triggered paid and the change work order is paid. And then that holds people's feet to the fire on like, this is the plan and this is the route we're gonna go. So I think a little bit of footwork on their part for
Figure something out.
maybe
Yeah.
administrative purposes of like, how do you keep all,
Yeah, Catherine and I and Kyle and I will work through the wording for it, and then it'll be presented to the planning commission or the moratorium committee. I'm sure we'll probably need to find a few more tweaks in the wording, but for now we have a good spot. If everybody's satisfied with 18C, perhaps we can tackle one of the bigger topics, whether that's setbacks or zoning districts, in our last 20 minutes.
I would just like to add, in the district of, on page 2, the site selection, where it mentions agricultural residential district, this land use shall not unreasonably diminish farmland, including but not limited to prime farmland, and to the extent the evidence of farmland is available in record, farmland dedicated to cultivation of specialty crops. So from the developer where they proposed the site in accordance to the location to the substation, I did do a NRCS and USDA soil report. And in that soil data, that category of land is considered a, let's see here. It's a farmland class, and that area is considered prime farmland. So if we're gonna have the language in the ordinance, and then accreditable soil data recognizes that that's prime farmland, it could be contradicting if that's what we're doing. And then I think that just brings us to the biggest question are these, if you classify agricultural residential, what does that mean? Agriculture is where things grow. Residential is where people live. And for a project like this to go in the middle of that, I just don't understand in its definition of what it is. Agriculture, residential, or industrial scale facilities set in.
In my research, which could be flawed, precursor, the reason that ag is often utilized as an approved zone for these types of projects is the assumption of space. And in Kalamazoo County, the average farm parcel is no bigger than, I think, 74 acres. That's the average, right? We have some bigger, some smaller. But I don't know, like, that would be my argument to not necessarily follow the same thought process that's applied broadly, because I think we have to think specific to our community. And so while Joe and I were having this conversation, but while if I'm thinking thousands of acres, hundreds of acres, that feels like, gosh, that's probably away from people, and so that feels presumptively safer. That's not likely what we're gonna find in our township. And so that makes me uncomfortable. I'll just say it that way.
And I have drove around and looked at where do you find chunks of land? And for example, the developer indicated a substation with a chunk of land, ag residential, houses, businesses, school. Then you drive to the other side of the town and you look for a substation, green meadow. Then there's neighborhoods and houses and school. And so I have not been able to drive around. I met with consumers. They showed me the substation locations. I have not found a parcel that, like, if my family or myself was a resident to live somewhere, like, where would that be okay for one to be and not the other? I just don't feel like our township is developed with land that is big enough they have people living right by them. So in my opinion, I think that this belongs more in an industrial or a manufacturing district. And I know that this is likely between setbacks and zoning districts, the hardest conversation to have, but it's a conversation to have.
I don't know if this question is appropriate at this spot, but it maybe. Do we have, like, is there consideration for, so one, maybe you remove ag residential, but two, is there something that we can build in to incentivize or make something easier if they use a brownfield site? And the caveat to that question is, do we have a brownfield site in the township that either is not, like, that would not pose the risks to a residential area? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So for the moratorium committee, we did reach out to the county brownfield administrator and asked if there are brownfields within the township. She said you don't really know until they test for it. So we could have 1 million brownfields in this township. Nobody's tested, so we do not know. Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at.
So scrap that. Thanks.
Yes.
In an ordinance, you could incentivize brownfield. I believe, Kyle, have you done that in anywhere? I'm thinking of somewhere I've seen that they allowed it in certain areas if it was a brownfield, but not anywhere else in that same zoning district. I don't remember exactly where that was. But again, we have a problem because we don't know where, we might know where some of our brownfields are, I'm not sure, do we?
Yeah.
And if
I'm
a
not
concern could be that it would be next to a high population area
I'm not
or a school.
comfortable with the risk of not
and
knowing where the brownfield
so-
is, so.
A brownfield could theoretically be anywhere. And we did get a map but like Casey had mentioned, we didn't really find what we were looking for.
Already developed plan, because people already knew.
Projects being developed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our testing was done, yep.
Okay, so,
Anybody else have anything on that topic?
I don't believe so.
So
I don't know.
zoning, the question on the table is zoning.
In districts?
Bob?
Well, we went with the ag district because they're bigger pieces of parcel. So there's more land to use. There's less populated, even though there's a school there. There's also a substation there. There's a golf course behind that piece of property. It's not like a solar farm that's using 8,000 acres to put in 18,000 kilowatts or whatever. It's using 20 acres to put in 400 megawatts. So they're not using the whole parcel, they're using part of it. Not all of it is tillable because there is about 12 acres of woods over there that some of it would probably have to be replaced. You don't know where they're gonna set it because we don't have an ordinance yet to get a site plan shown to us. So, but we went with agricultural or manufacturing for a special reason. We didn't want light manufacturing because that's where we want the jobs to go, where people are of manufacturing, someone's gonna put a business in, they're gonna hire employees. So that was the reason for staying out of light manufacturing.
Yes.
And the ideal spot is next to a substation, so you don't have to spend $1 million a mile to run lines and purchase property along the way and whatnot. So we did a lot of thought on this when we did it. And the agricultural, that's the reason we went with it originally.
And my thought with that is we don't write the ordinance for the applicant. We write the ordinance for the whole community.
And
So
we
we
said
can't-
all
we
that
can't
when
sit-
we wrote it.
We can't sit and look at just one battery storage. We're talking other projects.
Craig?
Nothing.
Joe?
Yeah, Amber and I did have this discussion, and, the only reason I hesitate to take agricultural out of there is because I'm afraid we will make it unworkable. We will have created a situation where you can't find a site that will meet the requirements of the ordinance. I think the only likely possibility of citing one of these projects, given the setbacks and such, would be in an agricultural zone. So I'm conflicted, but I'm not sure that we can do that.
I agree.
If, hypothetically, if it is unworkable, I guess if they don't choose us and they choose somewhere else, is that bad? Is that, open to your thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that. I mean, we talk about all the what ifs. What if they blow up? What if they catch fire? Okay, well, what if they go, you do not have a workable ordinance? We're bypassing you.
Sure.
Right, which is what, and I think that's why we're here, is because we want to avoid that. Just because the state, well,
With all the people who came to see us in the MPSC, that is not going to be their first choice.
it may not be their first choice, but it's not their last choice either, I don't think.
I don't think
I
they're
mean,
gonna-
when you've got millions of dollars on the table,
It is so difficult to go through that form.
Perhaps.
We'll
So
find out
difficult.
soon because someone's in the process. We'll see how long
Yeah,
it takes.
right?
So, and,
If I can interject, sorry, Bub.
no, you're fine.
We still have public comment to get to, so I think we'll wrap it up in 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Any final comments?
You guys, get a turn.
Jim, go ahead.
I feel that agriculture needs to stay in because it's a parcel of land, it's open, it's attractive to the people, and I just feel that I agree with agricultural and manufacture.
Jerry?
My last thing that I would just add is if we want to make a attractive place for people to live. Some people do seek to have a chunk of land, to build a barn, to store their boats, their RVs, and to park these things in people's proximity of their houses or near their land. I think you start pushing away those people who want to come buy a piece of land and have some property, whether it is 5 or 10 acres, and build their dream pole barn and live and let their kids run out back. And then there was another thing that I had, but hopefully I remember again. Sorry.
Okay, and before public comment, it seems like we still need to discuss zoning districts come to decision and setbacks for sure, and then other things that been proposed. So another special meeting, July 26th or July 24th, may be necessary?
Okay.
Okay, that's one.
Yeah, I don't think we're done.
Not at all.
Oh, I remember. We're, in this regard, we're talking about renewable energy, and I've been a little confused of the name of the committee as renewable energy, but we're tailoring it towards a best battery energy storage. And so when we talk about agriculture, we talk about land and footprint, and we kind of think solar because of space. But then when we talk about batteries, we talk about how many megawatts can be produced on a small plot of land. In industrial zoning, where energy consumption could be required, and if you think about a backup plan of energy and manufacturing and industrial, those are going to be big uses of energy consumption. And so in our community, if that siting was located near the consumption of energy, granted that maybe the power is not sent across the state to just a data center, but is there any benefit of our community and our manufacturers and industrial manufacturing and businesses to use that power? So I think in terms of battery energy storage, if it doesn't need a big chunk of land like solar, then why are we focused on big chunks of land unless we're trying to have huge battery projects? And then a huge battery project becomes even more of a concern being next door to people's houses.
Okay. I think everybody's had their chance to speak. At this point, I think we need to open it to
Too many citizens, but
citizen comment.
we have 2 citizens.
I would entertain a motion to open it.
I move we open the public hearing, or the public comment.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
A citizen may state their name and address and may speak only one time for no more than 3 minutes. This time may not be given to another citizen to extend their time. The person speaking has the floor, and no other citizen shall speak during someone else's time. During this time, you will be making statements to the board without discussion from the board members, but you are welcome to make an appointment with planning and zoning staff to discuss your comments further. Please keep comments clean and respectable.
Nate Dorleg, 8782 East Main, Galesburg, Michigan, 49053. I'm a resident of Comstock Township. I just want to say thank you to you all for the hard work you're putting in on this, doing the work that's required to get us the best ordinance law so that we can protect the community and our future generations here. Along the lines of time, I also want to caution that there may be some people that may want to rush through this process right now. On July 4th, we all have heard of the One Big Beautiful Bill was passed. There is language in that bill that pertains directly to what we're talking about today. I encourage you all to look up the FEOC requirements for battery energy storage projects. Sorry. Beginning on January 1st, 2026, battery energy storage projects claiming certain clean energy tax credits, United States, are subject to restrictions related to foreign entities of concern. The contents of these batteries, all the large-scale batteries that are made now, the contents are largely procured from foreign entities that are going to be precluded under law. So there could be a rush from some people to push this through and try to break ground by January 1st, 2026. But I encourage you to keep working on this, keep doing the due diligence to protect the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Amber? Bo?
No, I'm good. Good.
Craig? Joe?
Nothing.
Jim?
Nope.
Sandy?
Let's just set our next meeting.
I think we did.
July 24th, same time?
Okay, that's July 24th, and we're doing the same thing we did today.
At 4?
Okay.
4 adequate, 45?
4's good.
4 o'clock.
Jerry?
I'm good.
Is-
No, I'm good.
Ben?
I'd just like to mention, the moratorium committee, we talked about putting together a packet. We're gonna work with Casey and Kyle, and then I started just gathering all of my documents as well. So I was gonna share those with Casey, and then there's a couple questions that I have of other documents, if we could put those in. So we're gonna work on that, and then we'll be able to have something tangible as well.
Our binder?
Yep, like, I think to minimize cost, we're gonna try to figure out how to maybe have a binder and then figure out how to something like that, so. And then all the moratorium committee meetings most of them are on Public Media Network. And it would be starting with March 27th, when you're taking the time to scroll through. There's a special meeting, that's Robert Thalls. So when you see the special meetings on Public Media Network, it starts, the first committee meeting was March 27th. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Cal, Catherine, thank you.
And Catherine.
This meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.